ready with the mics.
I planned an hour and a half presentation for
You can give it. I don't know what it
Is he ready to go?
is. Give it is not the issue.
Hopefully you started a half hour ago.
But, you know, let's not have. So for the record, it's 1 o'clock, and we will call the August meeting of Child Youth Services Committee to order. And I know there's a sheet, so that'll be passed around. For the record on the mics, we'll go around the room. Chris Rogers, County Board. Go with you, Jeanette.
Janae Pancook, Operation Youth Success.
Whitney Maston, Midlands Mentoring Partnership. Deb Neary, Midlands Mentoring Partnership.
Pam Murphy, County Administration.
Constance Myrendorf, Douglas County Clerk's Office.
Mark LaFleur, Douglas County Youth Center.
Brad Alexander, Douglas County Youth Center.
Adi Porter, this County Health Department. Catherine Hall, County Administration.
P.J. Morgan, County Commissioner.
All right. Item 1, Brian.
All right. Population today, we're at 88. We averaged 81 kids in June. That was the first full month without the staff secure. And we averaged 21 also in July. The length of stay has been a topic of conversation, and that was 43 days in June and 44 days in July. So for the first 7 months of the year, our average length of stay is 47 days.
So 17 over half. 18,
Oh, yeah.
19, 20.
Yeah. Jennifer Beck has been asked to co-chair. She's the school liaison for the youth center. She's been asked to co-chair the reentry committee with Darcy Portland for Operation Youth Success. Dave Collins, who is our lead teacher at the youth center, we are going to be submitting an application, just so you know too, to see if he would be able to be a part of the schoolwork program, work group.
Sweet, yeah.
Okay. We have a special education teacher that is up at the youth center now 3 evenings a week, and she's also there over the weekend. So that's very helpful because a lot of our kids are involved in those programs. We had a graduation on August 3rd. We've got another scheduled for August 3rd, and then we have another one scheduled for August 10th. And we actually had 2 kids that graduated but left. They were both Ralston students, and they left before we could hold the ceremony. One unfortunately went to the adult facility, and the other one left for a placement. So we weren't able to get that done before they left. I think I mentioned this, but Region 6 increased funding so that we have an additional LMHP at the youth center, which is great. And we're actually meeting with them on August 3rd to discuss the potential for them to add funding even further to include a psychiatrist at the youth center. So we're hoping that something can happen with that. ENOA, Eastern Nebraska Office of Aging, we met with them on July 10th, Mary Parker, and Mark subsequently went to them and presented to a group of some 40 plus.
Yeah, 40, 50 grandparents. If the room smelled like cookies, there are grandparents everywhere. It's really cool.
But to present to potential foster grandparents information about the youth center. Seems like there's one that's very, very interested, and so we haven't heard anything further since Mark went up and met with them, but hopefully we'll hear something soon. We're meeting with 2 yoga groups, one on August 3rd, and then we've actually made contact this morning by the phone, and that one's scheduled now for August 10th.
August 3rd.
Yoga.
Yoga.
Yeah. And you just walked in, Marianne, but we met with Mary Parker from on July 10th, and Mark went out and presented information about the youth center following that meeting to about 40 or 50 potential foster grandparents. And, sounds like at least one is very, very interested and might be a good fit, so we're waiting to hear more. We're going to be meeting with Jean Hartnett, the new director at the health center, on August 9th, just to kind of welcome her and discuss some of the shared services that we have in common. We're also going to be meeting soon with Joe Lorenz to discuss the per diem at the youth center and the potential to adjust that. He'll look at the numbers and he'll make a decision as to what the appropriate number is.
So now 210?
$210.56.
That's going on 5 years.
Lancaster County is $276. I'm not sure what Northeast Nebraska Juvenile Services is, but it's well above what ours is as well.
276.
Well, we had a.
That was the agreement they have with probation. Their per diem is actually over 300, but they agreed to 276.
But it's kind of supposed to be market, isn't it? I thought this one we
The
did.
county attorney, the last time we adjusted it, the county attorney instructed us that we could use a market rate
Yeah.
or the actual numbers. So Joe obviously will be the one to determine the actual numbers, and we know what the market rate is.
276.
That was the agreement with probation. They told probation that their per diem it was over 300. I would be guessing beyond that, but I do recall it was over 300.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Well, don't you remember,
I
we
do.
had this big discussion, it was years, like multiple years, about that per diem, and we backed off, which I thought Lancaster did too, but then they came, again, it had a lot to do with that transportation issue. And so, I'm
No, it got-
curious to know how,
It got ugly. That's
Yeah.
when it became an issue in the media, and
Yeah.
Lancaster County had requested that probation remove all their kids, and
yeah,
the bickering was just a little out of control.
yeah.
Most of the kids that are staying are kids staying for placement.
No,
So
most
the
of them
kids that
are.
are in there that's causing what's the drive of the average length of stay?
I think it had to do with, and I'm blanking on the LB number, but it shifted the kids from, that could have been filed in adult court to juvenile court. So those were the kids that probably would have stayed longer anyway.
So were they staying waiting for a court date?
No, I don't know that it's necessarily a court date, but it's just the juvenile system, the way it works, and now all of a sudden, if they're in the adult system, they're not having to wait for evaluations and doing all those things, or they're in juvenile court now, so they do. And so it moves a little bit slower. We've had a lot of, most of our kids right now are coming in on gun offenses.
So, but a while you talked about your number was like 25 or 30 that was having mental health issues.
Yeah, it's 25 to 30% of our kids.
If they're sitting there and they should be placed somewhere and they can't find placement, or somebody's done it.
Well, it's difficult in some cases to find placement with some of the mental health youth. That
Because of capacity outside.
Well, yes, and waiting for evaluations to be done and getting those, getting that in front of the court, and then once the court has the eval, the process is finding the right placement for the youth. And in some cases, they've already gone through and they've already had their adjudication and still trying to figure out whether or not a location would be willing to accept a youth. So, but really a good part of what's driving it too is that now that they're in juvenile court, more evaluations are being ordered. So youth are we're getting more juveniles in the court, more evaluations are ordered. It's taking longer and longer for those evaluations to happen. Not all of them, but those psychological evaluations and SUD evals, it just seems to take a long time to get someone in to do it.
I guess what I'm trying to say, if you are going to negotiate this, I guess I'm trying to weigh it. At one point, we were having a discussion about the state about a kind of a fee for every day over 20 days. And I'm just saying, is that conversation worth having and try to move the system up?
Well,
And I'm just saying I want to have it because if that's the case, if Lancaster 276, there's no way that they should be below us. And so
I mean, I think there's some value in that after disposition. You know, because if
Well,
they're
I'm
on
just throwing it out
probation
there.
and
If you're gonna negotiate.
they don't have an order for release, then obviously they can't, their hands are kind of tied until that happens. We do, I mean, when they go to like Kearney, and that's the only time we bill OJS anymore, is when they're waiting to go to Kearney. And I mean, they get the first 24 hours free. And I think that does help. And they're actually pretty prompt about getting them on their way to Kearney after the order is issued.
All right, well, I'll just put in your head for negotiations for that, because
What-
if we are holding them for, almost, in the past, it felt like we were floating them because we were holding them and it was there, and it was cheap.
It's probably, I mean, honestly, we got 88 kids there today. I would guess that it's probably about 8 or 9 that are waiting for placement. And some of those haven't had their orders issued too terribly long ago. With the mental health piece too, one of I agree with everything Mark just said, and then another thing too is they come back to us awful quick sometimes. I mean,
From school? Well, not.
no, well, the placements. that
From
they
the
go-
placement,
yeah.
they go to the placement, they act up, take off, and we see them right back.
But the placement knows they got the conditions, they should be able to handle it. You gotta accept it.
Of
Well,
course,
yeah,
yeah.
they have,
No, we
they
have.
get a full script of what's happening. And in most cases, the young people are fleeing, or
Well, they act out, and it seems probably not fair to say because I don't know all the circumstances, but
Sure.
sometimes it seems like it's they have a very low tolerance for any sort of misbehavior.
Seeing nothing. Janae, we'll go to you. Dr. Foreman, we'll go to you right before. I'm gonna go to you, no, I'm gonna go to you after this.
Okay. We had 106 applications for a program coordinator. I started phone interviews and hope to have in-person interviews slated for Monday, August 14th. I even struggle saying the word August right now. I have a requisition in. Emily Adams, our data analyst, has been accepted into the UNO Industrial Psychology PhD program. So her last day is August 10th. I'm really excited and want to choke her at the same time.
Who's this?
Emily, our data analyst, yeah, so she's amazing, she's gonna be great in that program. So that position is, the rec's been submitted, so hopefully that will be coming out here in the next couple weeks. And, wish obviously Emily the best of luck, she's just amazing. So, Douglas County Juvenile Justice Comprehensive Plan activities have been going on between about 120 survey responses we've received, in-person activities with a little over 100 people. And then yesterday, there was probably 30 people at the Juvenile Justice Provider Forum. They did some more activities, getting that plan together. The first draft will go before the OYS Steering Committee in January of this year. The actual next plan isn't due till July, but we're just trying to get as much feedback and input rolling into that. There'll be National Association of School Resource Officers training here for the 135 SROs within Douglas County. Next week, it's the second level of training. So they'll be in for beyond the certification, it's the next level beyond that for all of the Douglas County SROs. And then Strategies for Youth will be here in the middle of September, working to really fill in the connectivity between school resource officers, school administrators, and then OPS's security. So they're all talking the same language, have the same expectations of kids and who's responsible for what. Again, trying to keep youth out of law enforcement contact, out of detention. With the schools-based partnership in the last NASRO training and Strategies for Youth training combination last summer, this last school year, OPS reported a 50% drop in students being referred for court or into the justice system based on their attitudinal changes basically, and better strategies how to work with kids and understanding developmental brain
By the
things.
SROs? By better training?
By the SROs, yep, referring them on.
Come on.
Am I correct in that the private schools don't have SROs?
Good choice.
Not-
I don't think-
I think alternative schools do, but not like Horizon and those, but I have not heard about
I
You
Horizon.
like parochial too?
Yeah.
Yeah, parochial, not that I'm aware of.
Just an interesting factoid. Which I wanted to make sure I was correct on.
So now you can
So now I
actually
can say,
proclaim it.
yes.
That's it. I want Deb to get her hour and a half.
I'll pay her later today.
Good, questions? All right, yeah, so I've asked Deb, based on our last meeting in June, oh, that's right. I'm thinking yours gonna be heavy, so I might even say
Mine's
you,
gonna be
but,
heavy, so
okay.
you better wait
So they
when I
know,
talk
okay.
about data, so.
Deb and those guys, we talked about the last meeting in June, youth initiated mentoring was mentioned. You all had an interest in hearing it, and I think it'd probably be beneficial. They do receive CBA money, and they got somebody studying this nationally, so I asked them to present on youth initiated mentoring, give you all a chance to go back and forth a little bit on it. So they're gonna do a presentation, and we'll have about 5 or so minutes for questions. So,
Great.
Okay,
put it in
I'll
yours. Sure.
go quickly, but interrupt me anytime. I'm Deb Neary, Midlands Mentoring Partnership. I'm here with Whitney Maston. She's the brains of the organization, so I'll let her do most of the talking. But we were started in 1999 by Mike Yanni and Tom Osborne when they started their mentoring programs. But up until 2009, we never had any paid staff, and so it was really just about collaboration and, you know, trying to serve more kids. In 2009, we did receive 5 years of funding, and we've extended that, and we have over years received a tremendous amount of support from our philanthropic community because they understand the importance of data and evidence-based practices and the fact that we need a lot more mentoring out there supporting our community. So we both came on board in 2009, and we are not a mentoring program, never have been. We instead support mentoring programs. Our main goal is to make sure that we get a lot more mentors out there in the community supporting our youth, because there's so much research about, you know, just all of the benefits from having just another caring adult that's going to make a difference in the life of a youth. However, there's a lot of research out there that also says if we aren't doing mentoring correctly, using evidence-based practices, we're also going to be doing a lot more harm. And so we do a lot of trainings around what the evidence-based practices are. We have sort of an accreditation. We don't call it that, but that's the simplest way to explain it. You know, we even offer training for screening mentors that has been endorsed by the FBI, some FBI people that we've worked with, as being even better than a background check. I mean, some of you might be aware there was an incident just 2 weeks ago in the metro area in an after-school program that was doing background checks. And so we're now going to be providing our screening training for them. I mean, there's so many considerations to keeping our youth safe that we provide training for. But it's really about more mentors. So we started collecting data in 2009 to find out who we're serving. And what we learned was back then, and I had my own anecdotal stories because I've had 8 foster kids, and I knew I could not get a mentor for my kids. They kept telling me, if you adopt, well, you know, then it'll be considered a stable home and we'll let you have a mentor. Well, if I'm going to adopt, then the youth doesn't need the mentor as much. And so I knew just getting into this that, you know, we were not supporting the kids that we thought we were. So in 2009, we started collecting data, and what we found were that the kids that had mentors were the families that had a parent that was already a huge advocate for their youth and positioned to be able to, you know, do all those extras like call up and get a mentor. But we weren't serving the high-risk kids that we thought we were. We found that out of all the matches in Omaha, including Teammates and Big Brother, Big Sister, and 100 Black Men, and Girls Inc., and all the mentoring programs that we had, less than 2% of those kids had ever touched the juvenile justice system or ever touched the foster care system. So that told us what we needed to do. In the years since then, we have spent all of our energy putting a spotlight on these shortcomings within our sector to try to correct. And I do have a little bit about, what we do. On the back side are just some wins I'm just going to point to real quick. On the third row, we have seen 139% increase in the number of foster youth being served, and that was last year, and that number is a lot higher still. And in the juvenile justice world, we have increased the number of juvenile justice youth being served by 153%. Now, let me tell you, so Sean Kuhnfair has been somebody we've worked with for quite a few years, and she's the person who told us that for years and years and years, she kept calling the mentoring programs, trying to get some of her youth matched up with a formal mentoring program, and she kept getting turned down for the reasons that I told you, that some of our mentoring programs will say if it isn't a stable home, then we aren't sure that's going to be a successful match, so we're not going to take it. So she says for 10 years, they were not able to match any kids that were referred from Juvenile Assessment Center. That's Sean's words. And so we developed, and honestly, I know this is going to sound braggy, but we're the first in the country to develop a new way of matching kids that are high-risk youth. And it has been evaluated for the last 3 years by the top mentoring researcher in the country out of UMass Boston. Her name is Jean Rhodes. It was funded through a grant from OJDGP. Whitney's going to tell you about that. We have some information here, but we have a really exciting way that is to support these high-risk youth in a very respectful matching process that she's going to tell you about. There's about 200 mentoring programs across Nebraska that we're working with. There's 11 in the Omaha area that are considered accredited. I have them listed here. But we provide free training to everybody, whether they're considered accredited or not. Our hope is to keep getting these mentoring programs to increase the level of evidence-based practices that they're using. And so we never want to charge for any of our training offerings just because we really believe that it's very important. Any questions about? Okay. So I'm going to let you tell them about the
model.
The model.
So in 2011, 2012, some research came out of, some mentoring research came out of a model called the Youth National Guard Challenge Program. There is no Youth National Guard Challenge presence in Nebraska, but it is in, I think, 20 or 30 states around the country. And it is a residential treatment facility for teenagers and young adults. And they were utilizing a unique method as those young people transitioned out of the residential facility and back into their community. And what they did is they went to those young people and asked them, who is it that you look up to in your community? And then they connected those young people with the person that they identified. And they measured it over a couple of years and saw that those youth who had a mentor that they selected had better outcomes than youth who were matched with someone they didn't know and youth who didn't get a mentor at all. So we became aware of this and thought it was very interesting. It had not been piloted in a more of a traditional mentoring sense. It hadn't been piloted with younger youth. But looking at the data that we had been collecting for several years, we knew it was definitely a problem in our community in terms of who we were actually reaching with programs. And there's a variety of reasons that programs aren't always reaching the highest risk youth, but we knew we wanted to do something to change that and that there needed to be a little bit of a paradigm shift in terms of how mentoring programs viewed those relationships and how they did business. So we worked to implement this model locally, first working with Sean and her team at the Juvenile Assessment Center. Basically, we created a video that young people view when they're going through the intake process at the JAC. That presents the concept of youth-initiated mentoring to them. It explains that they will have a say in who their mentor is, but that there are some expectations around what that mentoring relationship will look like. So they will enroll in a formal setting. The mentor will be trained. They'll be screened just like any other mentor and supported just like any other mentor, which was really important to us, that there continued to be some structure and evidence-based practices based on what we know already works with kind of traditional mentoring. So this model really puts the young person in the driver's seat. You know, most of the kids at the JAC, and later it evolved to include probation youth, are, you know, young 13 to 15, 13 to 16, where they see a value in a mentor but don't necessarily want to be matched with a complete stranger either, for a variety of reasons. You know, the benefits of this model are the matches are more likely to stay engaged with each other because they have an existing relationship before they enter the mentoring relationship. It's more efficient for the programs because these young people are helping to identify a mentor. There's less kind of laying the groundwork with that relationship building in the first place. A lot of programs in Omaha recruit mentors from one pool of individuals and have mentees coming to them from another pool. And a lot of times those individuals don't have a ton in common. So they may not be from the same racial background, they may not be from the same religious background, they may have different life experiences, and it can be done. Those individuals, those mentees and mentors can build relationships, but it's a lot more work for the program, especially in the first 6 months, to make sure things are going smoothly, that the mentors trained appropriately, that they understand that young person's family situation and don't impose judgment on that, which can cause a lot of problems in the success of the relationship.
Whitney,
Yeah.
Are you seeing any types of trends of who's coming, who the young people are pointing
Yes.
to?
Yes. Yes, so we are, which is very interesting. And we had some ideas, I think, going into this of who they would identify. And, you know, it is a little bit of a mixed bag, but it's a lot of, for foster youth, past foster parents, past caseworkers, teachers, school administrators, security guards, cooks, secretaries.
Rondi from
Yeah, Rondi from
DCYC is
DCYC
one of the people that was selected by one of our
Yeah.
YIM youth. Yeah.
And of course, we put into place all kinds of boundaries around who, if they're picking, you know, someone who's had a paid professional role in their life in the past, you know, what's appropriate, what's not. They can't be matched with any current teachers or school administrators that, you know, work in kind of a professional capacity to manage behavior or anything like that. They can't be matched with a family member because we can't control boundaries of what those relationships look like. So just to back up a little bit, and then I'll get into more what the research has shown us, but we intake those kids at Midlands Mentoring Partnership for the ones that show interest in participating. It's totally voluntary. It's not tied to completion of probation or diversion or anything like that. We go and meet with the young person and their family, explain the process, take them through kind of what we call an asset mapping or ego mapping, where they think about the adults in their life who they've had some kind of a connection with. A lot of times these young people identify someone that they were engaged with in the past, who they're not currently seeing regularly. Like, we've had a lot of high school age kids who identified an elementary age school teacher, kind of a thing. And then we reach out to that individual. We usually have them identify about 3 people, and I would say the majority of youth can identify at least 2. And then we go looking for who that person is. And sometimes that's a little easier said than done, but we exhaust all of avenues we can, you know, LinkedIn, Facebook, we know someone who knows someone who might know them, kind of a thing. But by and large, we track these people down. We set it up to them and say, look, you know, you may not have thought about being a mentor before. You may be a teacher or a caseworker and have no interest in spending your free time doing this, but this specific kid identified you. And overwhelmingly, people are flattered. They're surprised that this kid remembered them. And so then we take that, once the mentor accepts, we take them through a paperwork process. You know, they're screened, they're trained, and they're passed off to one of the mentoring programs that we work with that utilizes best practices to handle the match moving forward. So we don't operate as a mentoring program, but we facilitate kind of the early process and then hand it off so that, that mentor has a program staff that they can connect with if they encounter an issue. They have ongoing support. They have free activity ideas. There are expectations associated with the frequency of meetings and the type of contact they're allowed to have and safety and all those things.
Can I just explain at this point, because this is county money that we use for this? Once we've matched them, our staff, then we hand them off to a formal mentoring program to be monitored over the next year and supported. And we use our county money in part to pay that mentoring agency $500 for every match that they'll take for the upcoming year. So,
Yeah.
Anyway.
So we just ended we're in the third year of this project. And in the middle of the first year, I was presenting on this model at a national conference, and we were approached by a researcher who was in the audience who said, "This is really interesting. I know this population is underserved nationally. Can we study what you're doing?" And we, of course, and it was a study funded by OJJDP. So they had already received the grant, and they were looking for subjects to study. So we agreed at that point to enter into this study. It was, like Deborah said, a very, highly respected and well-known researcher in the field, so we felt famous and really cool. And so they've been, there's a qualitative and a quantitative aspect to the study. They've been surveying and interviewing matches for the last 2.5, 3 years. And just 2 weeks ago, we received some of the preliminary research. So just to back up a little bit, this model was already grounded in some research, but the way and method in which we applied it locally was definitely different and unique. And so that's what they wanted to study. And in your booklet on the right-hand
Research
side,
summary, you can.
so the research summary is on the right-hand side, but overwhelmingly, we felt anecdotally like this was a strong model, that things were happening. But the research has totally supported what we saw and felt and heard, which we're really excited and feel gratified by. Basically, young people are more likely to enter into these relationships because of the ability to select their own mentor and kind of the expectations that they have up front of knowing how they'll interact with that person, knowing what they can expect from that person. Relationships are more likely to form faster and be kind of, I don't want to say more intense from the beginning, because again, these individuals already have some relationship. The caregivers associated with the young people definitely liked this model because they also knew that individual in most cases and knew what to expect from that person, knew there wasn't judgment from that person on their family situation. The mentors, again, overwhelmingly felt very flattered. They felt very invested in that young person from the jump. So it wasn't, oh, I get to know you over a year and then I really care if you're going to go to college or not, or that you stay out of trouble. It was, I already know this young person and what they've been through, and I want to be a part of, the mechanism to help them be successful in whatever it may mean for them. And, there's a lot of, we brought some books. There's an interesting new concept in mentoring called critical mentoring that puts young people in the driver's seat of their own relationships as they're, developing over time. And how powerful it is to give a young person a say in who they surround themselves with and how they, leverage adults in their lives to become successful or get wherever it is that they want to go. And meaningful conversations around identity and race and religion and, things that young people may not feel as comfortable talking about with someone that is a stranger or someone that they know does not relate to them on that level. So we're really excited to see that it's more about just, matching a kid with someone they know. It's about all that leads to over time when it comes to a young person's development and identity and, having someone else that they can genuinely trust in their lives.
So like I said, the JAG, and I know Mary and those guys use it, so when you all mentioned it, I figured this was a good hook to talk.
So we have opened it up to, first I just want to say, the idea for this and the discussion behind this is, years prior to us actually launching it, Chris Rogers has been on our board for 4 years now, an important part of the discussion. Vernon Daniels has been on our board for 4 years, an important part of this discussion. John Ewing, with his police department background too, is on our board, an important part of this, and Greg Gonzalez, who is currently. And so, I mean, this has been on our radar of how we, solve this, of serving these youth. We want to stop them from either touching the system or recidivating. And I mean, we feel like we have this gold nugget now. We know it works. It will continue to be researched about the long-term implications of that match, but common sense is going to tell us that, they already really like each other a lot. So, it's much more likely than if you put some stranger, with a completely different background. I mean, I'm not going to say that doesn't work, but there isn't that spark.
Are you finding that well, first let me ask, is there a specific period of time that you're asking as far as duration for someone to be as a mentor?
We're asking for a 1-year duration and 4 hours a week for that first year, but 4 hours a month.
Yeah.
But hoping it's more than that. And so we've opened it up to referrals. We really want deferrals from DCYC, probation, Jack, and also the impact.
The crossover youth.
Yeah, and we're having some discussions. I mean, Matt Wallen is looking at this for serving YRTC youth before they come back to Omaha.
We've added the question of mentoring to our transition success plan.
Mm-hmm.
So youth can start to self-identify potential mentors. And the question is, how do we pass that information along? But we're meeting with folks from the juvenile court next week for that conversation to see. But yeah, we've met obviously before, and this has been something that from our perspective, it can be nothing but a benefit for many of the youth. So
We'd love and we'd be happy to help however we can in facilitating that conversation. We've found that, simply asking youth, do you have someone you look up to, isn't super effective. We kind of need to ground it in some basics around, what are your goals? What do you really hope to achieve? Okay, now let's back that up and say, who is it that might be able to help you get a job at the Dairy Queen?
Yeah.
And then really diving deep into the avenues of individuals that they may have encountered along the way. Because you ask a young person and they're like, I don't know, I don't have anyone. But then you say, well, what about your church community, or in your elementary school, did you have any staff there that you really looked up to, or do you have any friends of the family that you spend a lot of time with? So we found that the more conversation that we can invoke, the more likely we are to identify.
and all of that is information that we have in our transition success plan. So I think we're pretty well positioned to further the conversation.
Yeah, good.
But that after we have to present that to the court, so we can get their approval. But after that, then we can certainly.
We would love that.
We've been working with Release Ministries for a number of years, and I saw they're one of your.
Mm-hmm.
So they are, and they are taking some of these YIM matches.
I think, Release Ministries has been a great partner. We know that they're working heavily in your facility and doing a great job. I guess my only caution would be that not every family or young person is drawn to a faith-based program, and so we really try to get that information up front to accommodate wherever it is that family is. And they have been phenomenal and are just doing some really great work, and have even supervised some youth-initiated mentoring matches when there is a religious kind of background of the mentor and mentee, and they feel comfortable with that. So.
Oh, we would love the opportunity to pursue this further, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
We've got kids that are out on that one program that I think would really benefit from this, and then certainly some of the kids that are moving on to other places, the opportunity for them to, in some cases, I guess, reconnect with some people that had a positive influence on their lives. I think that would be fantastic.
And keeping the, image around it as this is a perk and a positive, and it's a friend, it's not another probation officer, and that's why the video that we show, and we could even maybe create a new video specifically, with your help. But, I mean, we want kids to understand this isn't another punishment.
Yeah, and we're targeting recidivism as an
Okay.
issue as well. So
Okay.
we're on the same train track as far
Right.
as that's concerned.
Our biggest challenge, and this is from us to figure out how, I mean, the mentoring programs in Omaha that will take these kids is limited, and so we are trying to incubate new mentoring programs, and we have had some success with that, and we're really excited that the YMCA has taken on, I mean, I think one of the more exciting mentoring programs, because they will take kids with any kind of diagnosis, and I mean, they, and they provide their mentors 15 hours of training, which, to really, and so we need to keep incubating mentoring programs that will take these kids, because some of our traditional mentoring programs won't. And so that's my challenge, but that's for us to figure out, if you can get the kids to agree to a mentor, we'll figure that other piece out. It's.
So I figured most of you all can connect afterwards. Any more questions? All right, so appreciate it.
Thank you.
Dr. Poor, bring the headings.
This is interesting discussion, and, we talk about young people, and how more interesting to talk about their health and what their behaviors are. And so what I would like to talk about, these three are for individuals whose eyes are a little bit more, you probably have seen it. And then I have some smaller copies for some of you. And I can send you this in a report or however you would like to have it. But what this is the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. And that is a survey that is now being done for the third time in Douglas County. It's being done every other year. It's a CDC survey that's being done across the nation in public schools. And for quite some time, just a little short background, there was an issue that really our schools didn't want to participate in Douglas County. But for the last 3 years, we were fortunate. So last fall, this was done again for the third time. There were about 2,100 students that were asked to participate, and 920 did participate. It's by active consent. So the school sends out the consent form with the student, they take it home, they bring it back, signed by the parents. And I think that is a little bit an issue for us and the challenge, because those things are being kept in school bags, and the parents don't see them. Commissioner?
How many was the,
900.
no, I mean, how many were sent? 2,000?
2,000, I can give you the exact figure. I think 2,100. So 41% have actually been returned. And what that means is that we cannot generalize over the entire population, but we can only say people who took the survey, this is what the results are. So we just need to be careful. And all 3 years we have experienced this actually, that we are never able to generalize the findings. But and you see on the first page, on the bottom, these are the 6 areas, because we think those are the behaviors that lead to the primary death in youth, 9 through 12 year, and that's why these were chosen to be looked at. And then what I did is you have a few overview slides there, and I want to just explain to you, they look gray, they look green, they look red. What gray means, we are on the average of the national data. So I always like to compare ourselves and see how do we compare as an urban community. If you see one of those green lines, that means we actually do statistically better than the national average. And red, of course, is the opposite, where we actually have challenges compared to the national average. So on the first slide there, you see a lot about weight. How much of our youth population is overweight, how much is obese. And you are seeing there, the overweight is 19.2%. So we have increased a little bit from 2 years ago. and obese is 12.7%. We definitely have a population that is more leaning towards being overweight and obese, and we need to work on that. I think on that slide, just what I want to share with you is that we have 44% of our students who are reporting that they are trying to lose weight. And we as adults have a certain responsibility. How can we make that work? How can we help youth if they want to lose weight? Is it because we offer more programs? Is it because we have healthier school lunches? We have more option on school lunches so that we really can make it kind of easier for our youth. So I wanted to point that out to you. On the bottom, next slide, it's around physical activity. And there we have a few challenges. One is, the first question is, have you had 60 minutes of physical activity every day during the last 7 days? And we are worse off than the national average is. I don't really know too much what to think about that. It may mean that we don't have opportunities for our young people to invest 60 minutes every day in physical activity. So I think, again, it is something to think about. If you think about your kids walk to school, there's already some physical activity there just by walking to school. And as we know, that's probably a little bit more challenge there. But so physical activity, a little bit to do with it. What I showed you on the pie graph is the number of, oh, did I get it? Okay, no. Okay, so the new question on that slide I want to share with you is, have you had a concussion more than one time in the past 12 months? That is a new question that never was asked before. So then when you look at the pie chart there, Commissioner Borgeson, right on that pie chart, it tells you 85% are saying no, they haven't had a concussion. However, on the right side, it's going to tell you that 7.9% are saying they have had at least one concussion. And 2.9% are saying they've had 2 concussions within the last 12 months. And then there are some who even are telling us they have had more than 4 concussions. So, you know, this is baseline now in my mind, because you hear about the issue with concussions and brain injuries a lot. And I think this is the first year that we are collecting this type of data. On the next one, we talk about nutrition, and what you see with nutrition is we are on average across the nation. Our kids are not wanting to eat, some of them don't eat fruits and vegetables. I don't think we can put too much emphasis on what is on that slide. I think we just need to say, nutrition-wise, our kids are not different than across the nation. On the next slide, I'm not sure, on the back, there is beverage consumption. Now, I do want to point out some of the positive things that we have seen. And we have seen, as a community, a decrease in soda consumption, specifically from 9th to 12-year-old. And I think that we should celebrate that. Mm-hmm. And we should say, you know, our kids are hearing the message about the calorie intake by soda. And when you see there, we actually have decreased in every category. We have decreased, drank 1 soda in the past 7 days and drank 3 sodas. We only had 3.8. We are better than the national average on this. On the bottom, you see there, when you look at it, our kids don't like milk. So you are seeing a decrease in milk consumption there too. The next graph talks about personal safety. Mainly what we are talking there is helmets. Our kids have never liked to wear helmets when they bike. So more than 74% are saying they are not wearing a helmet. However, they are wearing seat belts now. Only 95% of our kids are not wearing seat belts. And you know the cars are making a noise on you when you are not wearing your seat belt. So I think there we see some positives around it. What is a little bit surprising or disturbing to me is that a fourth or a fifth of our kids, 1 in 5, is driving with a driver who had alcohol consumption. 1 in 5. And then at 10%, 1 out of 10, the driver, meaning the kid themselves, has had alcohol and they are driving. You know, as a community, we are, to a certain degree, a car-centric community. It's very difficult for kids to find a cab or find public transportation at night, but we need to think about some methodology, how we can make it more easily available, so there is no excuse to drive home in your car after you have been drinking.
Uber.
Yeah, Uber, there you come. Let's go to
Maybe we could partner with them.
Maybe we could. Maybe we can give out coupons,
Vouchers.
Uber, voucher Uber. Uber's the one. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. The next one is around violence. Also what we see there is actually some positive results, especially on top of it in a physical fight in the past 12 months. We see a decrease from 2 years ago, and again it shows us that we are better than the national average. Now the next indicator you see, we have seen some increases. A student did not go to school in the last 30 days because of safety concerns, meaning they were concerned of safety, and 8% are telling us that. And that again is, what can we do about that? How can we assure that schools are safe and that walking to school or driving to school is safe? In a physical fight on school property, I think that again shows a decrease, 7% at this time, and threatened or injured with a weapon on school property, also 7%. The last one is concerning to me, and I don't know if you feel that way. Carried a weapon to school in the past 30 days. 4.4% of the students that were interviewed in this are saying that they have carried a weapon to school. That should be 0 or a very, very low percentage. That is too high, I would say. So go over to page 6 on the...
Did it identify what weapon, what the definition of weapon was?
I think he
He
gave them some example, a pocket knife or a gun,
Right.
but it had a series of,
Okay.
so it all was lumped in
Okay.
together.
So
Yeah.
it could be not just a gun, not
Yes.
minimizing gun,
Could-
but, okay.
Yeah, it could be, it's called a weapon. And the next one, the graph is all around mental health and behavior. And suicide. And that is the one I just need to bring to your attention again. This is the 3rd time in a row that we have had this as an indicator, that we are worse off than the national average. And what it tells me is that this is not a fluke of the data one year. This is not a population that was selected to answer these questions. But this is an issue in our community. Mainly that 13% attempted suicide and more than 5% needed medical attention for their lives. And it is a sad state, actually. This is what our young people are telling us. What you see on the next graph there is, I'm always interested, and for each of these indicators, we actually have these graphs that show us 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. Where do we see differences? And we don't really see differences in regards to suicide. They are all about at the same level. The next one is about tobacco use, and I tell you, just glance at it, and that slide looks green. And so what it should tell us all, every question that was asked around tobacco use, we are doing better than we used to do 2 years ago. Again, I hope it is national effort, it is local efforts that really are telling youth, there is really something, let's not even get started. Let's stop smoking because it isn't cool to smoke anymore. And what is encouraging to me on the next graph, you also see that this carries over to electronic vapor products. It tells you that 31% dry vapor product, but today only 17% are using electronic vapor products. And the next one is 40% have tried to quit. So I think this is really positive, and if we can learn from anything how that was achieved, we should try to.
The question is, it took what, 20?
It took us a long time.
20 plus years to get it.
And remember how the programs in schools were, they were very intentional towards tobacco smoke. So it worked, but they are taking a long time. It isn't happening overnight.
So you're ready for the vending machines.
The same thing I would have to say for our youth in regards to alcohol consumption. All of the question, have you ever drank alcohol? Are you drinking, are you doing binge drinking? They all are decreasing in youth. I hope this is continuing and we will see a continuation as we go on. But again, when you look at alcohol use on the next graph, where you see it broken down by grade, you see 11th grade is potentially the grade with the highest alcohol use. And binge drinking again, 11th grade. I'm not so sure what is it about 11th grade. Are you then moving from 10th to 11 and you suddenly think you are kind of an adolescent and now I can try everything? You are working with youth.
You know, it's interesting that there's more females that confess to alcohol use.
Yes, that is interesting. Do you think they're more honest than men?
Yes.
I would say if it comes back when you look at the suicide attempts, there were more females
Yeah.
also, so
that
that
doesn't
depression or
surprise me, but
like
it could be
self-medicating or
across.
something. I
Probably
don't know.
more bullying.
Sure. But I tell you, we've been seeing more young men doing more self-harm over the past 5 years. So the trend with the young boys, young men is certainly going up.
So the next two graphs actually talk about drug use specifically. And not a lot of surprise, marijuana is the drug of choice with our young population. But there are two new questions on there that I think really go to the national conversation. And the first question is, have you ever used prescription painkillers without a prescription? And there we see 11% of our youth. The next question is, are you using right now painkillers without a prescription? And 7% are telling us they do. So I think, this again is a baseline for this year to really kind of tell us where we are going to go with those questions, because it goes into the opioid crisis that you see on both sides of the coast. The next one just talks about what about the other drugs, ecstasy, cocaine, heroin, and you see those are being used at a small percentage, less than 5% with most of them. The bottom one is an interesting one. Have you ever been offered, sold, or given an illegal drug on school property? Think about that. And 1 in 5 says they have been offered or they have been sold themselves drugs on school property. Again, I think for schools, that's a very interesting data.
Actually, lower.
It's lower than you thought? Really? Oh. It all depends on
I
what
would
you're,
think that would at least, I would have felt that was everything.
more than 1 in 5?
Yeah, that's what I would have thought too.
Do you think it has to do with the drug-free zones around schools?
No.
No, they get it from their friends.
It is
Yeah,
what
they're
it is.
friends. They
Oh.
bring it in. Yeah.
Okay.
Free zone.
I haven't
Just helps
been in
you.
high school for quite a few years, as you can tell. So. Prescription drug use, again, the highest is in 11th and 12th grade, and that's not totally surprising. But when we look across what about the other drug usage, we don't really see a difference there from grade 9 through 12. We see it higher, however, in males versus female. And the next one is one that we often talk about, is about the sexual behavior in our youth. And I'm really proud of our youth, because what you are seeing there, and this is something that I often share with county commissioners, is the behavior of our youth is not different than youth across the nation. Our STD epidemic has to do because our infection is higher than it is in other communities. So it is, one infects 3 more that probably don't know that they are infected. It's asymptomatic, doesn't have symptoms, and I think that's what you see there. The new question in this is, have you ever given money or something of value in exchange for sex? And close to 9% of our youth are saying yes. That's a new question, and we'll see how that will go. But also with all the programs that are going on, this is an interesting question. I think that we need to really watch very carefully.
Is this an underlying sex trafficking question?
Yeah, well, it could be the first step into sex trafficking.
And the question is, have you ever received money, or have you ever, the way I'm sure it means, have you ever been given?
Have you ever been given money or something of value? Have you ever been given money or something of value? And on the bottom, I think why I put that slide in, just to show to you there really isn't a difference between the different grades. It goes across. A little bit higher in male. The next one are some other indicators, and I think I just want your attention to the first one. It's a new one. Sometimes or always go hungry due to not enough food at home. 12% of our youth are saying they sometimes or always go hungry because there isn't enough food at home. This question came from another survey that is being done in some of the schools, and actually because of the percentage now, Northwest High School is having a pantry in the school. So people can go and take some food home, specifically over the weekend. Nobody should go hungry. And it may be that this actually needs to be extended. This food insecurity, what you are seeing there, what is a little bit of a surprise to me, it's the highest at 12th grade. Lastly, just some grades telling us how good the students are who partake in this survey. And then you have the Reader's Digest version on those last few slides that says where our students are worse than the U.S. and where they are better than the U.S. students. But you get a little bit the picture how this really looks like, and I think specifically for individuals who work in the mentoring programs too, it is important to know what is the health of our youth. What do we need to focus on? What do we need to look out for? Because all of these things have signs and symptoms with them. So I think it was really appropriate and very nice to have you here at the same time.
Did you collect zip codes in this information?
No.
Okay, so I was going to say, we couldn't look at those.
No, you cannot look
Okay.
at zip code, you cannot look at race, ethnicity, and you cannot look at schools.
Okay.
It's a CDC questionnaire.
Okay.
So, and I don't know if you want to give this to the board at some point, and so you should be ready for that, to bring it to the board.
Oh, to the.
But just to know,
Yes.
I mean, since it's relevant in this room, the whole data thing with, us collecting juvenile data. Richard Schultz, who's the data person in the health department, is gonna start sitting down with, Probation and some other people, so when they do the QRS, they're gonna start to try to, I asked Richard to try to backfill what he could intensity-wise, because they got a gargantuan amount of stuff down here. Try to help overlay some of this, and it could be relevant in a whole lot of discussion. like next time Brad and those guys present, my hope is to introduce that data memo to the group so they can kind of see what's there, and as we put a little information in there, paint a picture and try to tie some strings together. So, yeah, that's what it is. But I'm gonna have to get up so I can give it to you. But the thing I need you all to know too from the last meeting is, I mentioned the study that may happen. So that study, the building commission did do an RFP for that study. So that's gonna take its course and go from there. That was the study to see the facility and if it's possible for a one-stop piece. So they're doing an RFP for that. And the other piece is, they more, definitely probably Catherine, Carrie, Mark, Levon. We did apply for since the Crime Commission got out of the OJJDP, they worked very hard on putting together a proposal. So that proposal was geared mostly toward DMC, so hopefully some of the stuff that's been talked about after a while will come in. So, just so you all know, that's out there in the ether.
Do you remember, Addie, what year they lowered the BMI?
It's been the same BMI for all of those three measurements.
For all of those three?
Yeah.
Okay, I would just be curious to go back the year that they lowered it, just to see what that difference is. Because lowering it, you're actually placing a whole lot of people into that obesity issue. So anyway, I'd just be curious if we could find that, just so we put
But
it
you know, we
into
don't have
perspective.
any data going back to the 90s.
No, but it would, well, it was before, I mean, it was before the 90s that they actually lowered it. But I can't remember what year it was. And then did they break down, when I think it was Janae who brought up about the female numbers being higher than the males in a lot of these, did they break down the bullying and, well, basically the bullying, really, I'm more interested in, for female versus male?
Each one of them.
Each one of them.
Is broken down. So when, I think I sent you the entire report. Each of the questions has it by grade and by sex.
Okay.
So you can look at that if any of you are interested in one specific,
Okay. And, well, I'll talk to you about
Yeah.
that other.
And overall, we had about 50% 50 female and 50 male participating in the survey, so a pretty correct.
But don't you find it interesting that those that answered it, the majority of them were A and B students? So
Yes,
that would be,
yes.
you would think, again, that's our perception again, our stereotypes that we have, that it would be those with the kind of worse grades, if you will, lower grades, that would be the ones,
All those you
Right.
but it's all, and we forget that a lot of times. I mean, we do.
And it's across the community, it's
Right.
not a certain part. of the
That's right.
community. There are actually it's a little, the race ethnicity is a little bit, we have 8% African Americans in there, you know, the population is about 12%.
Right.
So we have a little bit lower representation there.
You have anything except the data memo that's new?
I don't have the new data memo, I brought just the targets, and really data is where we're at with J&I right now. Warrants have been one of our targets since the beginning, and Thursday at our collaborative, if anyone can attend, we will
Give it
have,
out.
data, this one's for
Okay.
Thursday, the collaborative.
Gotcha.
Copy.
All right.
And so Thursday at our collaborative, we will finally, when we talk about warrants and JDI, for the 2 years that I've been here, it's just kind of warrants. But finally, with the addition of our new data person, we have some really good data on what does it mean about these warrants, what kind of warrants kids are coming in on. We're at mostly unlawful absence that they're leaving from some court-ordered placement. A lot of times that placement is home. They're not kids who score to be detained with our risk assessment instrument. So now, with this information that we'll have Thursday, we're hopefully going to be able to get to some good strategies of what to do for the kids who do not score for detention, but definitely violated their court order by running from whatever placement they are currently in.
Did you have anything, Elijah, that you wanted to ask since you were here? Okay.
And Elijah is a member of the DMC committee as well.
Good. Okay. Anything else for the good of the cause?
We're done.